I would like to stress that already in January, the Commission offered support to Member States through, for instance, an EU joint procurement. As soon as a sufficient number of Member States had signaled their interest, the Commission launched such joint procurement procedures, whereby we drastically sped up the procedure. From our side, for instance, there was only 5 working days between the submission deadline for offers and the contracts being sent to companies for signature. For the joint procurement on gloves and coveralls, contracts have been sent to the selected companies, and the Commission on Friday spoke to the executives of some of these suppliers to speed up the signature. For the second joint procurement on personal protective equipment, the contracts have been sent to the companies, and the first contracts have now been signed for equipment such as goggles, face shields and masks. This means that Member States can now start placing orders from these companies. The next steps depend on when Member States place their own order after the signature of the contracts by the suppliers and how fast industry can deliver the material at national level. Some of the equipment, depending on the specifications of the contract, could be available within a few weeks after Member States have placed orders. However, taking into account the difficult situation of the market, some products require a bit more time to be produced and delivered. But overall, for the joint procurement launched for personal protective equipment, the Commission has received offers for all categories of equipment requested, some even exceeding the amounts requested. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then I have a question from Daniel Weber from Radio 100 Luxembourg. Le Luxembourg fait partie.
Luxembourg is one of the countries that joined the joint procurement of EPV, etc., PPE, personal protective equipment, for end of February, March, which a communication on 24th of March followed up on regarding its success or otherwise. Now, the Minister for Health in Luxembourg recently said that, to us in an interview, that in Luxembourg, the procedure is ongoing and that nothing has arrived in Luxembourg yet pursuant to this procurement initiative. Luxembourg had already joined the effort early February, right at the start. We're now mid-April almost. How can you say this is a success if it's taking so long? Well, thank you, Daniel. Well, in my previous reply, I set out the stages and the speed with which we try to implement this and the different steps therein. Do we think that this has been a useful exercise? Yes, absolutely. But market procedures for joint calls for tender that the Commission take have to be seen in a broader context. This context includes the Member States and Commission trying to guarantee medical equipment availability. Member States themselves, at a first level, can do their own national procurement for PPE. Some Member States use third country supplies, like in China. At the beginning of the pandemic, we helped China. China is now helping us back, as it were. And when there are economies of scale or joint needs, the Commission can have a joint call with Member States in a coordinated way. This also helps balance and break down the shares fairly between Member States according to their needs for PPE. And as I said in my previous reply, we launched the procedure and we tried to keep formalities down to a minimum. I mean, administrative formalities. Furthermore, in a critical situation, the Commission can also use the rescue stockage instrument for storing, where medical stocks are set up, can be set up by one or more Member States. In a situation such as this, Member States and Commission, however, depend on the market's capacity to actually supply the needs. In addition to all the things I've just identified in terms of specific actions, the Commission is in regular contact with industry to help them and facilitate boosting their capacity for production. our process or processes for these joint procurement initiatives have to be seen in this global context where member states and the Commission are working together to guarantee availability of PPE. Thank you. Thank you. Daniel has a follow-up. So you see, follow-up is possible. Luxembourg, in the meantime, nationally, successfully, asked for similar material. The minister said it was a good thing not to wait for the common procurement initiative to bear fruit. So does the Commission still think that, given the time lag, this was still a useful exercise? Well, I think you've heard us saying that it is useful. We still think it's useful, but you have to see it in the wider context. So